You're listening to Inside the Village, where all news is local and no topic is off limits.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob.
Welcome back. It's episode 3 of Inside the Village across the Village Media platform and, of course, on the World Wide Web, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple. We're all over the place, and we're having all kinds of fun. It's been a week. How you been? It's great to see you.
Great to see you too, Scott. I missed you.
I missed you too, and I mean that genuinely. Hey, got out for my first round of golf a few days ago.
In this weather, yeah?
In this weather, dressed for it. It was dry, except in the bush where I spent most of the day looking for my ball. It was a little wet, and still surprisingly some small piles of snow. But nonetheless, it was great to be out there, great to be swinging, and looking forward to another great golf season. Also looking forward to another great episode of Inside the Village. We've got 3 really cool topics that we're going to touch on today. This hot button issue coming out of Orillia. See you on the patio. We're going to talk to Dave Dawson, our community editor there, and Ted Emond, one of the city councillors. Find out what all the hubbub is about in Orillia. Stewart Reynolds, that name may not resonate with you, but you and I have been speaking lots about Stewart and the great work that he's done online through the pandemic, otherwise known as Brittlestar, and I know that you've loved his videos.
Oh, his stuff is hilarious. It's funny, I didn't realize who he was. Like, you know him because most of us have watched him, not realizing who that guy is, but I'm really excited to talk to him.
Yeah, and his videos, I found out, have already achieved over 600 million views worldwide. He's a big deal.
Yeah, I think we're right behind that, aren't we, on Inside the Village?
You know, we're closing the gap, as they say. There's still a gap. Some would say it's sizable. I don't think it's sizable, but there is a gap. We'll talk to Stewart shortly, and also going to find out about the largest ever conservation project in the country. That's exciting as well. But let's kick it off as we always do. The first word to Frisco and the election. We're officially in election season coming up June 2nd with the provincial election, and I can't wait to see the coverage that you and the editorial team here are going to provide for us.
Yeah, we're really excited. I mean, this is the moment where our local websites shine, right? During an election, people want to know the local issues, the local candidates, and we're the place they go for it, and we're excited to do that work, to provide that service. If you go to our websites now, there's a special Ontario Vote section on each of our pages, so if you're looking for information local to your region, that's where you find it. So the 4 weeks to go, it'll be exciting to see what happens, and we'll be on top of everything that goes on in your community.
All right, can't wait to check that out and follow it along as we approach the 2nd of June when we go to the polls here in Ontario. Coming up in the first segment of Inside the Village, See You on the Patio is causing quite the stir in the city of Orillia. We'll find out why and talk to our community editor Dave Dawson and Ward 1 City Councillor Ted Emond. That's next on Inside the Village.
From newsmakers to celebrities to other prominent guests, you'll find them all on Village Media's new interview series, Up Close and Personal. Join host Scott Sexsmith as he goes one-on-one with well-known Canadians to hear their story. Up Close and Personal. Look for it on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
We're pleased to be joined right now on Inside the Village by Dave Dawson. Dave is the community editor of OrilliaMatters.com and the regional editor of our sites in Simcoe County. It's patio season everywhere as you look outside the window and see the snow is gone and the sun is shining brightly. And patio season this year, Dave, certainly in Orillia, is a little bit different. Maybe you can give us the backstory.
Yeah, so I guess have to start a little bit before this year. 2 years ago, the city started a program called See You on the Patio. It basically meant that downtown restaurants could bring their patios onto the streets. They closed off our main street to vehicular traffic, and they did that for one night a week on weekends. It was a way to get people comfortable eating again outside and together due to the pandemic. It was very popular. The next summer, they increased it to 2 nights per weekend, so Friday and Saturday every weekend. People loved it. There was all kinds of traffic downtown. The restaurants, they said it was a lifeline. It helped save some of them from probably death. And everything, there was the odd security issue at night, maybe with some, rowdies, but very, very little incident. Just a happy, festive kind of atmosphere that allowed people to go downtown and feel safe again. And so everything was good. And then on April 14th, the Downtown Orillia Management Board, which is a group of downtown merchants, they had surveyed their members and asked them if they wanted to continue this program, which everyone kind of assumed would be a no-brainer. But surprise, surprise, they got some response to a survey that they did that suggested that people were kind of split on it, or at least the merchants of downtown Orillia were kind of split on it. And in the end, they voted 4-1 to drastically scale back the program and have it on only 3 nights this coming summer, which coincided with 3 special events that they were planning. You know, a downtown car show, a festival. And so anyway, we reported on that. We were the only one to kind of get onto that story and report it. And almost immediately, the backlash was just incredible and uniform. That people were just furious that this 5 people in this group of downtown merchants decided to essentially cancel this program that had been so popular. And so that just sparked outcry from residents. We got letters from people from all over the province that had come here and loved it. And they were just furious. And so that sparked a petition. It sparked, we published 21 letters in a matter of, I think, about 8 days.
Dave, you've been a journalist in Orillia for so many years, an editor there for a long, long time. Have you ever seen a story have this kind of feedback from readers?
Never. We had many, many moons ago, there was thoughts of bringing an incinerator to Orillia, and that got a lot of feedback fairly quickly, but nothing like this. This was so quick. And sometimes you get campaigns, right? You get, a templated letter sent by a lot of people, or, a group, is behind a campaign. But this was grassroots. Like, it was just regular people from here, regular people from, that had visited here from all over Ontario. And just all were just aghast at this decision. They couldn't believe that this little group would make such a decision. So yeah, never seen anything quite like it, honestly.
It's a great example too, Dave, of great local journalism, right? I can imagine what this story, how it would have unfolded if we didn't have Orillia Matters in the community reporting on it, sort of being the place where people sent their letters and debated the idea.
Well, I think that's what we wanted to be when we started, right? I kind of look at us like, kind of the water cooler of town. People like to gather and have opinions, and we're really the only place they can come for that in Orillia. The newspaper in town has not covered this story. The TV station did a story on it about a week after we did, so they kind of stepped in. But we're really the only news outlet that covered this from the beginning and have allowed people to weigh in. And I truly believe that if we weren't here, there might have been a different outcome on this one. And people certainly wouldn't have felt they had their say anyway. So I think we were able to give them that forum, which is so important in a small town.
Dave, it seems crazy to me that 4 or 5 people would take what seemingly looked like a fantastic idea where most of the residents benefited and just want to turn it upside down and fix something that clearly wasn't broken.
Well, that's it in a nutshell, Scott. I think what the DOMB did was they did a survey of their members, but what they did was they said, this is going to cost us a lot of money and we don't have any money. What do you think about us continuing this program? So it was kind of the survey, from what we understand and what people have said, was very poorly composed, and it didn't have a very good uptake. It was just emailed out, and it was really a split decision. About half were in favor of continuing the program as it was, and about half were in favor of scaling it back. And then the board decided that they would go in favor of scaling it back. And so they essentially said that cost was the big issue because of COVID and some of the programs in place, and it allowed this event to happen fairly seamlessly. But now that all those things are not in place, they said it would be more difficult to do. They're worried about manpower and that kind of thing. So I mean, it's really hard to get your head around how they thought that would make sense to most people.
And where are we now, Dave? Did City Council reverse this decision? It is going to happen now this summer?
Well, it's a kind of complicated thing because it's not City Council's decision. Really, the only decision the city has is to grant them permission to open the main street, to close it to vehicular traffic. However, 3 councillors came forward with a notice of motion at last Monday's meeting and said that they would like to see this continue and that the city would pay up to $10,000 to make it happen. And then they added a condition that, okay, we'll bring this back to council in a few weeks after the DOMB has had a chance to reconsider, which they've done. And then now they have to just kind of come up with a business plan and determine exactly what this might look like. And it seems like, things are in order for this to continue, thanks to City Council's intervention.
For sure. Dave, I didn't ask you and I should have, but you went down, I assume, at some point this last summer and the last 2 summers to see you on the patio. What's the atmosphere like down there when it's going on?
It's just fantastic. I think because of not being able to go out to dinner for so long because of COVID and all the restrictions, and even, many didn't like going out with masks. It didn't feel the same. So it's on that backdrop that then when the downtown closed to vehicular traffic, you could go downtown, sit with friends, family, have a beer, feel relaxed. It was festive. Like, it was just like everyone was so happy to be able to go back to that type of environment again. People really enjoyed it. It was relaxed, carefree. It was great. It was just a really smart thing to do.
We're now joined by Ted Emond, a city councillor with the city of Orillia, to continue this discussion. Ted, welcome to Inside the Village. Appreciate you taking some time with us today.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You've spearheaded a motion, I understand, to return See You on the Patio, the program back in play. Maybe you can give us your perspective.
I'd be happy to, yeah. Councillor Campbell, Councillor Sepola, and I put forward a motion last week after our Downtown Management Board, our BIA leadership decided to restrict the program to 3 nights this summer. We felt that the feedback we'd been receiving in the surveys we had done after the first 2 years of the program warranted the program being returned to both Friday and Saturday nights. So we put forward a motion to do that. And interestingly enough, we had quite a bit of feedback in the community over the OMB's decision.
Mr. Emond, can you talk about the feedback you received when it was first announced that it was not going to happen again this summer? I mean, what were people telling you? The reaction was amazement, actually. I think reading the letters to the Orillia Matters and the comments that were appearing in social media related to those letters was almost absolutely unanimous that the people had enjoyed the program, the people were expecting the program to return this summer, and almost close to demanding it be returned. Mr. Emond, can you talk about what it means to the community to have this program? I mean, Dave's talked to us about just the festive atmosphere downtown over the last couple summers. What's it meant for the city to have this event?
Yeah, let me back up just a wee bit and comment. We started the program as part of our economic recovery efforts during the pandemic, and we recognized that restaurants and bars across the entire city were suffering mightily by basically being closed down for many months, and that the opportunity to move outside would be really useful. So we introduced a number of changes. We introduced changes within our building and planning department to reduce the amount of regulation that was required to have a patio. So it went from something like 3 to 4 weeks of work to a day and a half in order to put a patio out, and simplified things of that nature. The province helped a lot by changing the liquor regulations and making it easier for people to do that. That was aimed at the entire city. The challenge our downtown restaurants have is that most of them don't have any place to expand other than into the public realm. And the public realm is basically the sidewalk and the street. And we have historically allowed patios to build on our sidewalks, but there was a fair bit of bureaucracy involved in that. And we thought that, gee, in this pandemic situation, we can help by opening up the streets on the Friday and Saturday evenings. And we went ahead and did that. And the feedback was that several restaurateurs have approached me over the last 2 years and said, look, we wouldn't be in business today if we hadn't had that surge of patronage that came from the opening up and the See You on the Patio program. The unintended consequence of that, by the way, was that our residents and our visitors who had been isolated at home and all of the constraints that came with the pandemic had a relatively safe way to get outside, to walk up and down the street, to enjoy a meal if they wanted to do that, window shop in the stores, and actually socialize. And that became an even bigger benefit to the program.
That makes total sense. What was it like for you when you were down there? I mean, just the civic pride must have been beaming at that moment to see the community come together like that.
It was nice. I also enjoyed the food.
Gentlemen, a very interesting story for us to follow, and I think I speak for Frisco when I say we certainly hope to see you on the patio this summer in Orillia. Ted Emond, City Councillor of the City of Orillia, and Dave Dawson, the Community Editor at OrilliaMatters.com and our Regional Editor in Simcoe County. Gentlemen, thank you both for joining us today on Inside the Village.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Ted.
Frisco, our next guest has worked with the likes of Ryan Reynolds, Chef Gordon Ramsay, and now he's really plateaued. He's going to be guest starring on Inside the Village, of course, talking about Stewart Reynolds, otherwise known as a viral video star, Brittlestar.
Oh, I love this guy. I've been watching him through the pandemic, and he's hilarious. I don't know, his videos just pop up on my feeds, and you watch them, and he's poking fun at people who are against vaccines, against the mask mandates, and he's doing it in a really smart way, and it's funny as hell. And who knew he was from Stratford, Ontario? I just found that out this week.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting to talk to him. We'll do that next. Brittlestar with Frisco and Scott next on Inside the Village.
So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley. Hey, bully in the alley.
For the latest in in-depth features and enterprise journalism from your local writers at Village Media, be sure to check out The Big Read. The Big Read. It's the full story behind the headlines. Look for The Big Read on your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
Hey, bully in the alley. So help me, Bob, it's bully in the alley.
What if you maybe can't wear a mask because you suffer from one of the following conditions? Scientitis, acute wussness, selfish syndrome, chronic dickishness, pathological ignorance, or severe moronness. Don't worry. Now there's a solution. If you suffer from one of those conditions and don't want to wear a mask, just stay home. Seriously, don't go out. Stay the hell away from me. Let the rest of us just get on with it.
We're pleased to be joined by Stewart Reynolds on Inside the Village. You may know him better as Brittlestar. Do we call you Stewart or do we call you Brittlestar, or does it matter?
I have answered to much worse, so whatever you feel comfortable saying is good.
Stewart, you've worked with the likes of Ryan Reynolds, Chef Gordon Ramsay, and now you've peaked and you've made it to Inside the Village, and we're so excited to have you on the show today.
Well, it's nice to be at the end of the road. It was just that's the thing.
You're definitely at the end of the road, my friend. Stewart, do you still live in Stratford, or are you just born and raised there?
Born and raised, and then moved away, and then came back when we were going to have kids, and it's where we live now. Yeah, so back in the center of the universe.
That's amazing. And how long have you been back?
It's been a long time now. Our kids are 20 and 23, so over 20 years.
That's amazing. You know, we've all watched your comments. It's interesting, like I said to Scott. I mean, I'd seen your stuff over the last year and a half, and I had no idea the connection to Stratford, but I've watched your videos, many of them that come up on my different feeds. They're hilarious. You know, I just want to ask you, in terms of, you've been a comedian for a long time, but what was your goal? I mean, obviously with the pandemic, things changed. What were you trying to accomplish? That's a dumb question for a comic, but what were you trying to accomplish with this with this comedy? I mean, there's obviously there's a point to it, I guess, is what I'm saying.
I like hearing that question as a what are you trying to accomplish? Like, what do you think you're trying to do with this? It's it's funny because I've been doing social media content for the past 9 years, and so that means making videos, and largely comedic videos and posts and all that kind of stuff. And when the pandemic hit, it was kind of like I would look at the public health messaging and just in general, I sort of realized that, okay, we have to work together to get through this. And this is one of the very, very few times in the history of the planet where we've had to work together to get through something, and whether we liked it or not. And I thought, well, messaging seems really important, and I have a bit of a platform, so maybe I can make it slightly more entertaining. I mean, I love Dr. Tam. She's fantastic. She's amazing, incredibly smart, obviously, and lots of good information. But I thought, not that funny. She's not that funny. Maybe I could help her.
You're 100% on that. I mean, they did help. I mean, they helped, I think, in a lot of ways. I mean, I like I said, I think they were great. They struck the right tone. I mean, this is another dumb question, but do you feel they were helpful, Stewart? Do you feel they made a difference for people?
I mean, I hope so. I mean, I certainly have heard from a few people saying that there were people who, like with vaccinations, who were kind of on the fence and kind of realized, oh, okay, maybe I'm just being a little too panicky here, a little too conspiracy tinfoil hatty. So maybe I should just, trust the fact that if I got hurt today, I'd go to the hospital anyway. So why wouldn't I trust them with this?
Stewart, you talk about the platform that you have in researching before we hopped on this link this morning. I just want to run over some of these numbers because they're staggering. 248,000 Facebook followers, 144,000 Twitter followers, almost 19,000 on Instagram, and over 25,000 subscribers to your YouTube channel. Through all of this, and certainly a lot of the growth I would think has come in the last 2 years through the pandemic, has there been anybody that's followed you that you kind of had an aha moment and it was like, oh my God, I can't believe this person is following me?
Yeah, there's lots of really weird ones, especially on Twitter. Like Twitter for sure. The other platforms have kind of grown fairly okay over the past number of years, but Twitter exploded in the past 2 years for sure. And on Twitter, I have weird things like Nancy Sinatra follows me. And I'm like, this is weird. And then I had a conversation with Morgan Fairchild, and I was like, that seems odd, doesn't it? I mean, never mind all of your big people like your Ryan Reynoldses and all that kind of stuff, which is really fun. But like to have these sort of really strange connections where I sort of like Morgan Fairchild, when I was 10, she seemed, I wasn't sure of my feelings, but I felt pretty strongly for her. So it was cool.
Yeah. You talk about, you mentioned Dr. Tam, and obviously Dr. Tam and a lot of public health officials, they have to deal with the other side of Twitter and Facebook and some of the haters that they hear from. What about you, Stewart? How has that been for you? A lot of that?
I mean, a little bit of that for sure. I mean, I think it's kind of goes with the territory. One of my favorite quotes when I started this whole thing, quote by David Lee Roth from Van Halen in 1992 in Rolling Stone. He said, if you stick your head above the crowd, someone's bound to throw a rock at it. And it's just kind of it. It kind of goes with the territory. I get a little bit of that stuff, but really not as much as you think. Plus also my whole shtick is that I don't get into a dialogue with these people because a lot of the times, one, they're not real. They're just bots, and they're just sort of sent to, or they're just agitators. And so what's the point? They're just literally looking for a fight. And then two, it's like, I'm not going to convince you in a one-to-one conversation here. You just have to sort of follow the messaging yourself and figure it out. Yeah, I mean, it's also, I don't like to spotlight dumb information as well. So yeah, I just generally don't deal with it.
Oh, for sure. You must be looking forward to the day when you don't have to do any more of these. I mean, I've assumed you'd slow down a bit, but since you're our public health expert that people turn to, do you think we're almost there?
God, that's the dire state of affairs, isn't it, right? But no, I mean, yeah, I'm bored to death with the pandemic, and as everybody is, and COVID in general, and everything about it, the masks, the vaccines, it's like, but at the same time, we're kind of in the, I'd like to think, and I'm hitting my head here to say, knock wood, that we're in the home stretch. So I mean, we just had to like keep it together, kids. It's kind of like when you take your kids to Disney and you've spent gobs of money and they're little and they're tired and they're crying and you're like, we have spent gobs of money to be here. We just have to enjoy 2 more rides and then you can go to bed. And that's kind of what we're doing now.
Stewart, over 600 million times your videos have been viewed worldwide. One that sticks out with me, which I think maybe started some of this, was the whole KFC campaign. Could you tell us about that one?
Yeah, sure. It's a video called Explaining Canada Day to Americans. And I wrote the script and I sent it to a bunch of people that I had worked with previously. And one of those people worked at an agency and he said, would you be interested in converting this Canada Day video into a KFC commercial? And I was like, K doesn't stand for Canada, right? And he's like, yes, I do understand that. However, I want to let you know that Colonel Sanders died in Mississauga. And I was like, wow, there is nothing more Canadian than dying in Mississauga. That's fantastic. So I just sort of modified the script slightly. They were great to work with, and it was a really quick turnaround. We filmed the video in my backyard on my deck over the course of like a couple of days with some help from some other people who played different characters, along with myself playing the neighbor in my neighbor's backyard. It ended up getting, I think, sort of 35 million views in the first week. I think it's well over 65 million views now. Wow. It spiked national sales over the weekend. It came out by 10%. So I am hated by chickens across this country. Absolutely. But it's been great.
Stuart, you're very much a recognizable face to so many people across the country. What about in your hometown? I mean, can you walk around and go to the grocery store? A lot of people bother you?
I am probably the least famous person from Stratford, so that's okay. And when you're competing against Justin Bieber, Lloyd Robertson, Peter Mansbridge, I mean these are heavy hitters, right? So I'm way down the list. So it's people just let me go to Sobeys and let me do my own thing. Of course, I tell them not to meet my eye, which is key. So
for us at Inside the Village, all news is local, right? We're a local news company, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask you this. But we're launching a new website, a local news website, stratfordtoday.ca in Stratford. What do you think? I mean, are people excited about this? Are you excited about this?
Absolutely. I think local news is vitally important. And I think that, I think it's one of the weird sort of initial casualties of the internet. It's kind of like, wow, the world is in my pocket. And then we just started to care about just what was happening in the world. And that's good to know. But at the same time, it's what's happening in, North Carolina could be important as such, but at the same time, it's like, well, it doesn't really have as much impact as what's happening in my hometown to me directly, at least immediately. And I think it's just really, really important for us to have these places where we can get information about local stuff. And there's tons of news locally. There's so much news. And I'd much rather a proper organization made news about local news, or rather covered local news, rather than getting it from a Facebook group or something where it's just, hearsay and stuff like that. At least with local news, it's legit, like you guys in Stratford Today. I feel like if you could only lie so many times, so before you got caught. So that's good.
Stewart, before we let you go, quick question: what kind of projects are you working on now? What's on the horizon for you?
A few things. I'm doing, I wrote a book called Shortcuts a number of years ago, which is being turned into an audio drama podcast, which is really exciting. And there's working on, I have a vodka called S&G, which is was just going to be in stores this year finally, which is good. We started that a year and a half ago. Lots of fun stuff. And of course, more videos, and starting a new show on Snapchat. Don't laugh. You just have to re-download the app. Starting a new show on Snapchat Discover, and it's kind of a Canadian perspective type Trevor Noah, John Oliver type news-based type show. So we've done a couple of test episodes so far, and it actually goes live this week, which is exciting.
That is very exciting. And if you're looking for vodka samplers, Frisco and I are always available,
So
always
kind.
at the ready.
So kind.
And willing to do our part to help push your product. Stewart Reynolds, Brittlestar, you helped many of us over the last couple of years get through a brutal time in our lives. So on behalf of Canadians from coast to coast, and certainly everyone inside the village, thank you for doing that, and thank you for doing this today.
Well, thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for having me.
Frisco, coming up next on Inside the Village, we're going to be joined by a guest who's going to fill us in on the largest conservation project in Canada, and it is huge.
Yeah, this is a fascinating story. Just outside of Hearst, Ontario, the Nature Conservancy of Canada has purchased a piece of land that's about twice the size of Toronto, in the Boreal Forest, and it's going to be the largest conservation project, largest protection project like this in Canadian history, and it's fascinating. I'm looking forward to talking about it.
Wow, twice the size of Toronto. That is wild stuff. Mike Hendren joins us next on Inside the Village.
Reporters, editors, and journalists who go the extra mile to get the story and get it right. Go behind the scenes with those who cover the stories that matter most to you and your community. Look for it in the Village Features section of your favorite Village Media website across Ontario.
We're joined now on Inside the Village by Mike Hendren, the Ontario Vice President of the Nature Conservancy of Canada. Mike, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Mike, on Earth Day, you guys announced the largest single private conservation project ever undertaken in Canada. There was a lot of news about it. Can you tell us about it? What is it?
Sure. Yeah. So we known as the Boreal Wildlands. It's the largest private land conservation deal in Canadian history, and just in terms of size, it's about 1,500 square kilometers. 146,000 hectares, or if you're like me and you still think in acres, it's about 358,000 acres. And twice the size of Toronto, 3 times the size of Montreal. Similar to Puckasaw, a national park, if knowing you're in Sault Ste. Marie and you know that coast a little bit. So very significant property. And it is home to charismatic animals like caribou, lynx, moose, many of the songbirds nest there, like the Canadian worm. So very, very important property. And the Boreal Forest, as you know, is really is a Canadian landscape and very prominent in Ontario. So it's a significant part of our boreal, which is the lungs for the earth and a carbon sequestration space as well. So, and I should just finally say, obviously, it's a very important area for the Indigenous people who have been there since time immemorial, and it's part of the Treaty 9 territory.
You mentioned the lungs of the planet, Mike, and that's struck me as I was reading a lot about this. Can you explain that? I think a lot of people just don't really understand that. Why are these wildlands so important? How do they act as the lungs of the planet?
Yeah, the boreal has just the growing conditions there, the soil, and certainly the vast forests provide a lot of carbon sequestration. And this property alone, actually, we understand our estimates are it's actually provides carbon storage for the entire life cycle of approximately 3 million cars. So this site alone is fairly significant in that regard. And we are looking at putting together a carbon project. So we would be selling that kind of carbon credits. It's still very much a voluntary market in Canada, but a lot of people are buying into that and the importance of it. This is new space for us in Ontario. We have had a project about 14 years ago out west called Darkwoods. So we have some experience, and we're currently talking to a number of different potential partners in that project. And it's really going to be a critical part of how we ultimately finance and fully fund this project.
Mike, maybe you could speak to how the entire project came together, Domtar's discounted sale of the land, that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's a great story, I think, really. We've been working with a number of partners across the country, and certainly answering the call from the federal government and the provincial government to increase the amount of protected land in Canada. And the goal set really by our federal government and working with the United Nations was that 30% of lands and waters in Canada by the year 2030. So the 30 by 30. And so a couple of years ago, we started an exercise. Where are the big blocks of land that could be a win-win, right? We're not looking for everything. We want to find win-win solutions. Not everything's a fit for us. Our mission, really traditionally has been high biodiversity sites. So, and we came across this one as an opportunity. Domtar was, looking to perhaps dispose of the asset. It wasn't, they hadn't harvested in, I think, close to 20 years. And so like any business deal, willing buyer, willing seller, we've had a number of discussions, and they, I think in their words, thought there would be greater value really in turning this into a conservation site. So they certainly put some skin into the game. They've given us a significant discount price of discounted by $7 million from the appraised value. And so that really catalyzed the deal in the end and has allowed us to move forward. And we've got significant multi-million-dollar funding from the federal government, the provincial government, a number of private donors. We've still got $13 million to go of the total 46, but we're well on our way and just announcing it last week. We've had some great feedback and about 250 donations in the last week alone. So we're, hoping to get this closed by the end of summer.
That's great. Can you speak a little more to that, Mike? So you're asking the public to come forward and donate to this as well to be part of this conservation project. You said 13 million more you need?
13 million more, which is a big number, but it's a big deal. And we do think it's, Canada-wide and in fact a global matter. 2 years ago, we announced what was then our largest project in Ontario's history, Vital Bay at Manitoulin Island. It's approximately 19,000 acres or 18 kilometers of shoreline on Manitoulin Island, abutting the existing provincial park there. And we were surprised pleasantly by the interest that we got globally. Europeans who said, we don't have opportunities like this for conservation in our continent, and we want to support this. So, we appreciate, the opportunities to speak with folks like you to get the word out there. And we're optimistic that we'll be able to raise this money in the next few months.
That's great, Mike. Is there anything we didn't ask you about that you think the public should understand about this?
Well, thank you for that question. I think it's really this is really a Canadian story. There's nothing like large tracts of conservation land that are significant on the global stage. Canada has an opportunity here that really no other country in the world has. So, we really just hope that people are engaged and appreciate very much the Canadian opportunity that we have.
It's an important story, Mike, and we look forward to following the progress. Thanks for joining us today on Inside the Village.
My pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity.
Well, Frisco, that's a wrap on another episode of Inside the Village, another jam-packed episode. Brittlestar, man, was he funny.
No, that guy's hilarious. He's going to gain at least 3 or 4 new followers after appearing on our show.
You think that many?
Maybe 2.
All right. We look forward to having you back next week for another episode of Inside the Village. In the meantime, don't forget you can subscribe and download anywhere that you get your favorite podcast, Google, Apple, Spotify. We're all over the place. And, of course, across the Village Media platform and insidethevillage.ca. For Michael Friscolanti Frisco, see you next week, pal.
You too, buddy.
I'm Scott Sexsmith. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Inside the Village.